cloud. That way you can just, it'll generate a link and you can forward that to me for external, and we should be able to download it and get up on the website.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning again. And thank you, Rick, for joining this workshop. I know how busy this time of the semester is, so I understand, or I appreciate you coming and showing up. As always, I believe it's a privilege to talk about systems thinking. I use it in my research, and so using it to address sustainability issues is very important to me. And I try to make the topic as relatable as possible. So if there are any issues like social or economic or environmental, you can do it on your own. And I also recognize the responsibility it takes to communicate this as effectively as possible to help you understand that systems thinking can be applied to these complex issues based on scientific facts alone. And I hope that for those of us that have been attending the series, we are finding this workshop helpful. I am open to feedback. So if you need to address a topic, you have questions, or even research collaborations on systems thinking and its applications, just please contact me. I'll also like to thank the Sustainability Institute and Center for Teaching Excellence for sponsoring the workshop. Their sponsorship highlights things for me, including the importance of sustainability today. Sustainability is to improve the quality of our lives. That is the summary. We are trying to preserve our ecosystem. We are ensuring that we have equitable distribution of resources, not just for today, not just sufficient for today, but for future generations. And I believe that a win for sustainability is a win for everyone. And that is why when I was planning this series, I wanted to focus on the tools we need to tackle these economic, environmental, and social systems. So I'm going to share my screen, and just like before, I have the book list from before, and it includes simple reading on systems thinking. If you were here last time, I added another book called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. It does not explicitly talk about the tools of systems thinking, but it's a great book for concepts of systems thinking, I believe. Okay, so let's get started on our presentation. So as usual, I have an exercise for you to get us thinking about, systems. But this time it's different. I would ask you to close your eyes, put your hands on your heart, and repeat some words after me. So whenever you're ready, just in 3, 2, 1, close your eyes, put your hands on your heart, and repeat these words after me. I am worthy, I am enough, and I succeed in all that I do. You can repeat it again. I am worthy, I am enough, and I succeed in all that I do. Take a deep breath and open your eyes. Okay, that is the first part of the exercise, and it was to get you to relax. Because if you don't like puzzles, I have one for you. Let me see. So how many triangles do we have here? You can put the answer in the chat. How many triangles do we have in this slide? I see 10, I see 13, 13, 13. Yeah, we have 13 triangles, okay? Now I'm going to erase one of these smaller triangles, and I want you to tell me how many triangles we now have. It's okay, Laura. I didn't get it the first time too. Okay, with the new erasure, yes, we have 7 triangles. And before you ask me, what is the relevance of this silly exercise? Why am I telling you to solve a puzzle? How does this relate to a sustainability workshop? How will it help? Well, if you don't remember anything from today's workshop, remember this one thing, the exercise and its meaning. The triangles were connected to each other. And by taking just one small triangle out, just one, the number of triangles went from 100% to 53%. Taking that small triangle away removed almost 50% of the entire shape of the original triangle, just that small triangle. And our human species are more interconnected than these triangles will ever be. Which is why with sustainability, as humans, we cannot just focus on one aspect and ignore the others. Ultimately, we will be threatened when we ignore just one aspect of sustainability. So now that you understand why I asked you to do the exercise, what do you think about the exercise? Do you think we are more interconnected than these triangles? Or am I just, telling you to do this silly thing? So I like to use simple exercises like these that illustrates that everyone can be a systems thinker. Remember from last time what I said. A system is a set of interconnected, interacting, interdependent elements that meet a particular function or goals. We have interconnections around us from when we wake up in the morning to when we retire to our beds. And with globalization, we have more interconnectedness than ever before. So as systems thinkers that we are, we need to change our thinking. We need to change our thinking to match the interconnectedness of the dynamic complexities of our communities, of our environments. We need to change our behavior to social, economic, and environmental issues. We need to become more aware of the intended or unintended consequences of our actions. We need to be able to communicate with others so that we can develop a shared understanding and we can be sustainable together. We need to find leverage points that can cause significant changes in our systems and our systems' behavior. So in light of this, I want to also remind you of what sustainability is. And this definition, as you can see, since 1999, much has not changed with sustainability. A sustainable system has to have renewable resources used at or below a rate at which they can regenerate. We need our non-renewable resources like fossil fuels used at a rate at which an alternative resource can be developed so that if we ever deplete the non-renewable resources, we can have alternatives. All the pollution streams that we have need to be absorbed somehow so that they are harmless. And to be socially and economically sustainable, the resources must be equitable, they must be sufficient to provide a good life for everyone. And based on these definitions from 1999, we see that there are no sustainable systems anywhere. We are far from these definitions, but this is not because we don't have the resources. We have the resources to be sustainable, and we can be sustainable. We have just as a collective refused to change our behaviors, our patterns, and our structures. So I have a short story to tell. Recently, I met someone in downtown Charleston at a pharmacy close to the campus. I had gone in after lunch to pick up some prescriptions, but when I got to the pharmacy, there was no one there to attend to me. So I waited, and eventually a woman came rushing to open the door. She was apologizing for coming late and telling me about how she was coming from her first shift at another pharmacy in North Charleston, and how bad the traffic was. She went on to explain to me that she still somehow needed to convince her manager to let her leave early because she needed to pick up an important parcel for her mom. I later learned that she stays, her mom babysits for her, and with rising costs, she couldn't afford a caregiver because Charleston is expensive. She will be 30 this year, according to her story. And despite her situation, I considered her lucky because when I needed a caregiver for my daughter, I didn't have a mom in Charleston to help me. And I thought to myself, she has a mom is willing. What if she didn't have a mom? What will her economic situation look like? Will she work? What will happen to her children? So it got me thinking a lot about economics and wealth building systems that we have. If it is not sufficient for today, how can it be sustainable for our children or future generations? If someone who works 2 shifts cannot afford a caregiver, how is that sustainable? So if you've ever taken economics before, this is Economics 101. And some of the concepts I got about economic sustainability was from a sustainability expert. Her name is Kate Raworth. She talks about economic sustainability a lot. And this diagram is called circular flow of goods and services. As you can see in the diagram, households will provide their labor and their capital to firms, and in return, they get wages and dividends. With that income, they can spend it on goods and services, and it is intended that the resources go round and round, and so does the money. This diagram is important to know because at the heart of every economic analysis in Economics 101, this is the basis for measuring economic growth. But this diagram is fundamentally flawed. Aside the fact that things like healthcare affect this diagram, only healthy people can provide labor and capital. We also have government sectors that add taxes and fines and take away from that income. We have the political sector that make policies that may or may not have caused damage to our livelihoods. But all these you don't see here in this diagram. Also, there are things like unpaid work of parents, especially mothers, that is not in this diagram. There is a lot of value we create that doesn't get monetized. And I am not of the school of thought that everything should be monetized, by the way. I think that you should enjoy the things you love. For example, if you take good pictures or you're a good cook, why can't we just enjoy that? Why must I monetize what I love doing to make ends meet? Another example is Wikipedia. I cannot count how many times it has saved my life. And yes, I know we're academics. I tell my students, no Wikipedia sources in your essays. But the truth is, it helps me understand basic concepts that are not in my field of expertise. And it is free, quote and unquote. It is free because we have a collaborative, creative good, and it creates value, whether we like it or not. It is not in this diagram. Third thing is that household incomes are worlds apart. When we talk about income, the hidden things behind the household income, we have wealth that was forcefully taken and accumulated through slavery. We have gender pay gaps. We have race pay gaps. We have decline of unions. We have the eroding value of minimum wage. The minimum wage no longer can help. People have to take more than one shift. And in some households, their wages have remained the same through the years. They can't afford human basic needs like housing. And I really want you to think about some of the things I'm sharing, because we will use the systems thinking tools to analyze this. So we have two men here. I was looking for stock images of a construction worker and a teacher. So let's assume these are, construction workers and a teacher. I want to know, who is the hardest worker of these two people? And you can put that in the chat. Who do you think is the hardest worker here? And I can look at the chat now and see some of your comments from before. It doesn't matter what the metric is, whatever you are basing your, your analysis off of, you can put it there. So the hardest worker is the teacher based off of so. And so you can do that on your own. We are finding it difficult to pick which of these are the hardest workers I can see. And it's true, because if you think about it critically, these two men in their own right are working as hard as they can. But neither of them represent professions that are associated with high income wages. Neither of them represent these professions. As important as their jobs are to society, they are still considered low income earners. Mm-hmm. And if the pandemic has taught us anything at all, is that these jobs we have taken for granted are the backbone of our society. So here are some systems thinking tools. The last time we looked at the iceberg model. For this series, we'll look at the double Q diagram. And the double Q diagram is a modified version of a fishbone diagram or a cause and effect diagram. If you've ever heard of lean manufacturing or Six Sigma, they use this a lot there. But this is a modified version of those diagrams. And basically, it differentiates between the hard and soft variables that we have, and it's supposed to point you to issues that affect the society. So I want you to put it in the chat. What are some of the hard and soft variables that make income or wealth generation not to be equitable, right? You've heard me talk about my story with the lady I met at the pharmacy. You've heard me talk about the 2 men in the previous slide. So what do you think are some of the variables that make income or wealth not equitable? And I can go back to the chats now and see. Location, education, family bias, prejudice, yes. What's the distinction between hard and soft? Let's say soft variables are variables that you cannot see. Let's use that here. They are the hidden things that we don't see necessarily when we are analyzing situations. Hard variables are the factual evidence things that we see that affect. So for example, to generate wealth, I need to go to work and work hard and make money. That is going to be a hard variable. Yeah. Yes. So yes, hard variable: policies, road, tax base, quality, access to healthcare. So let me show you some of mine. And the double Q diagram is actually a brainstorming exercise, just like we are using right now. So this is good. Although I did some of the work on my own, it's usually us as a community coming together to determine factors that affect these issues. So I have oh, I was supposed to put that slide before. Okay. So I have three qualitative and quantitative factors here. There are definitely more, and some of the ones you mentioned before in the chat are also applicable. But I highlighted these 6 because of time. But definitely more of these factors can be applied here. So the first is healthcare. And whether you believe it or not, the saying health is wealth is true, right? You cannot work if you are not healthy. And this includes physical and mental well-being of individuals. According to the National Health Survey, 30 million residents don't have health insurance in 2020. In a society like ours, where healthcare is so expensive, this means that people with low-paying income will have a hard time generating wealth because they have low or no access to healthcare. And before you let me know that this is a small number, remember our exercise on interconnectedness. You cannot ignore that number. It is a big number. The second I have here is federal regulations, things like tax policies and monetary policies that make the equitable distribution of wealth difficult. Recently, the corporate tax was reduced from 35% to 21%. And there are several reports that showed that profitable large corporations paid no taxes. And we know that the primary source of revenue for government is taxes. This can be used to fund things, especially for low-income households, like schools and Medicare, and other facilities that are being used. The third is emerging markets. And I really empathize with those not in the STEM fields, because it seems like if you don't, or if you are not in the STEM field in the next 20 years, you won't matter. If you don't learn to program or code, your job is not given as much value. And there are a number of documentaries, there are a number of articles that address this. And so it is changing the behavior of people, and we are being driven by the behavior of emerging markets like technology. And so for those not in STEM fields or technology fields, they are at a disadvantage. They get to have low income because of the types of jobs they do. And remember what I said, all jobs are important to keep our society running, whether in STEM or not. On the qualitative side, we have the large pay gaps. We have both gender and race pay gaps. On an average, Black men earned 87 cents for every dollar a white man earned. And Hispanic were the next largest gap with 91 cents for every dollar. Women earn 82 cents for every dollar a man earns. And sadly, if you are in the intersection between gender and race, you are earning way less than these statistics. Remember from the first series, we need to empower women. It is a sustainability issue. And the interconnectedness to ensuring the well-being of individuals lies with empowering women. The other qualitative factor is the value of the minimum wage. It has remained stagnant over the years. Young people have to take up 2 or 3 jobs to keep up with the bills. I like the example I gave earlier with the woman. She has resorted to family helping her, supporting her. But what of people that have no family? The value no longer matches the standards of living, the value of the minimum wage, that is. And I think about my students, some of them who have to keep up with daily sustenance and are also trying to learn integrals in class. Something has to give, and I'm sure it's going to be integrals because they need to live. The last here is invisible labor. I made mention of this also before. We have things like Creative Commons, like Wikipedia. We have unpaid work of mothers or parents. In 2020, during the pandemic, more women left the workforce to take care of their homes. And there has been a decline in the mental well-being of mothers. It seems that more women are leaving the workforce even till today. The effect of the pandemic has left no support system that can be substituted. Now, this is where I'm going to ask you, what are the solutions to everything I just mentioned? You can put them in the chat if you have the solution. Yes, universal healthcare, better healthcare. I agree. Taxing those corporations, I agree. Okay. So time and time and again, we have been shown that these well-intended policies and measures to address the issues I just mentioned don't really do much. Sometimes they even make things worse, right? And this is because we are paying attention to systems, to sustainable objects as opposed to sustainable systems. We could have universal healthcare. We could tax these rich corporations, redefine wealth, have affordable housing. But if we are not changing the system and the structure of the system, we will still have these problems. And before you say, okay, what are we supposed to do? The truth is, we cannot walk away from the economics because it's all around us. People need to feed. People need to have housing. People need to have access to healthcare. And we cannot monetize everything, like I mentioned earlier. If I enjoy photography, let me enjoy photography. But can I really monetize everything that I know how to do? Think about it. What if our economics did not start with money or does not start with money? What if it started with us as humans and our well-being? What if? What do you think? If our economics started with our well-being, with us, each and every one of us, having human basic rights to food, to housing, to water, to healthcare, to education. I think that changing that structure where the value of our life depends on money we make should be changed. What do you think? Because if we go back to the picture of the two men, the construction worker and the teacher, if we find it so hard to say who the harder worker is, then why are we basing our economics on the money we make? How do we generate value based on the work that we do? We need to change our system behavior so that we have, every human being has access to basic human rights. And if you think about it, really, have you ever spoken to someone who wasn't into sustainability? What were they more concerned about? Making money, maybe healthcare, maybe food. They were more concerned about these basic human rights than environmental sustainability or their ecosystem. We cannot meet or preserve Earth's resources if our basic human rights are not met. Our inner well-being is what is paving the way for us to take care of our planet. If people don't feel well enough, the first thing they are going to do is not think about how to preserve the planet. The first thing they are going to think about is how they can be sustainable, how to sustain themselves. So definitely we need a balance, but also I believe that it first starts from these basic human rights. And this is the system that needs to change. This is the economic system that needs to change. The old structure is not sustainable based on the data that we have. People cannot continue to work 2-3 shifts to make ends meet. What will happen in the next 30 years? Will this be really sustainable for future generations? I can tell it will not be. Just by what has happened in the past year, the pandemic has had more people leaving the workforce than ever before. You go to your favorite restaurants or your favorite stores, and some of them are closed because there is no one to work. People are tired of this economic system. So let's go back to this economic system that I talked about. We need to add the visible and invisible things that we talked about, and we need to find a way to account for them. And before you tell me that this is not possible, I say it's a lie. During the pandemic, I saw people become more flexible to change than I've ever seen in my life. And so we can change our behaviors, we can change our systems. Imagine if we all decided to put our energies to economic sustainability, as we did to things like keeping ourselves safe during the pandemic, finding a vaccine. I don't think it's a crazy plan that our well-being should depend on meeting our basic human rights. We have the resources, and we need to work together to ensure the equitable distribution of these resources and policies that make us sustainable. If my progress, our progress, is measured by how much wealth we build, as opposed to what our well-being is, we may never achieve economic sustainability. Now, who has questions for me? I think I can go to the chats now. Yeah.
Funke, I often look at the UN Happiness Index, and places that have more human needs met through a commons or a way that everybody gets enough are happier people.
Yes, I agree. And this is also something I mentioned at the beginning, like when we have economic sustainability, it's not just a particular group that is going to, enjoy that. It's everyone. Most of the issues we face today is because of economic sustainability. And if I'm going to put it in terms, money, right? A lot of issues people face today is because of money, whether it's taking care of their families or trying to even put food in their bodies. And, based on the data, we have these resources. It's not just equitably distributed. People are, so even you, sometimes you get cranky when you don't have food in your body, right? And so imagine people that, don't have a meal a day or have to, work crazy jobs before they get a meal to eat. It's crazy. Things like this should not be based off of the kind of work we do, but just, a basic human right. And like I said, every job provides value. I don't know of any job right now that doesn't provide value. And I honestly think we need to readdress the metrics at which we access these jobs, because at the end of the day, I don't want my daughter to suffer or work 3 jobs to make ends meet. What if she wants to be not a professor like me? What if she wants to be an artist? How will she do that without sacrificing her well-being? And so I agree with you. I guess that's what I wanted to say. Any other comments?
Funke, I have a question, and maybe this will be the third part of the sequence, right? Because it's building on each other. I know part of systems thinking, especially metas, are leverage points. How do we get into and change these systems, right? So amazing what you presented today, in full agreement ethically, but also just thinking about new ways to teach this stuff. But you know, the question I can see our students having is, okay, well, how do we actually change these systems, right?
I think I mentioned this before in the first installment. We need to change our policies. That's it. We need to start to change our policies. When these politicians want to get things done, like reduce their corporate taxes, they know how to lobby, right? And it's the same thing. We have to create awareness first, and then we need to create policies that will change these structures in our systems. We also need to start re-educating our students and people. For example, that diagram in Economics 101 is flawed. I mean, I think almost everyone here, well, me, I heard growing up, you have to work hard so that you can eat, right? And it's not just about hard work. Life is so much more than that. It's so much more complex than working hard to make ends meet. And so if we don't change the structure of our systems from that systemic level, from the policy making, from the governmental level, honestly, it's going to be very difficult. And so that's the highest leverage point there, changing it from the policy level. Other low leverage points, like I've said before, are trying to re-educate people about how this is not profiting anyone. At the end of the day, everyone is not benefiting from this kind of system.
So I was thinking about, you have to back up and say, well, if it's policy change, then who makes the policy? And so I've been thinking a lot about, we need to be talking more to our students about running for office, serving on those committees that make those policies. We tend to, I don't know, that seems to me like, and I don't mean to speak for everybody, but like a career that people don't really think about. And I've been finding myself thinking, well, I don't like this policy. And the people we keep sending, either they don't have the courage or they actually agree with the way things already work and they fold into the system. And so I think we still send lawyers mostly who have a love, and again, I don't mean to group everybody, but for the way things are and the way things work and the laws that we have. And we need agitators. And it's like, I've been really thinking, like, at a local level, I probably need to think about what can I do, especially if I, getting close to retirement, or even on top of that. I mean, I'll tell you in full transparency, I have 3 jobs. I have this job, and I have a church job, and then I also teach in an after-school arts